Thank you, everyone, for inviting us to present today. I would like to acknowledge, respect, and honor the ability to live and work on lands of Treaty 5 territory, a treaty that was first negotiated and entered into in 1875 in Barons River. I would like to ask each of you to acknowledge the lands that you are on. It's important that we all respect the connection, place, livelihood, and belonging for Indigenous people forever.
So in the next 30 minutes, this is how we anticipate the session going. Blake will do a reading excerpt from each of the 5 chapters. He'll follow it with some highlights and takeaways, which are some tips and strategies from each of the chapters. We're going to start with an overview about who Blake and Joe are, what we hope you get out of the session, and how the book is organized.
Start things off, my name is Blake Priddle. I grew up in Northern Ontario and I went to Loyalist College for radio broadcasting. And then I went to Seneca at York for a postgrad journalism certificate. For the past 5 years, I have been a news guy and radio personality in Northern Manitoba. When I'm not busy working, I spend my spare time hunting, fishing, and hiking. And when it's minus 40 degrees Celsius, I write screenplays and novellas. I paint landscape scenes, or sometimes I'll watch funny shows on my iPad.
And I'm Jo, Blake's mom. I'm a retired public health researcher. I'm presently on faculty in our Northern Ontario School of Medicine. I'm also very active as a municipal volunteer. And I live about an hour's drive east of Sault Ste. Marie on Lake Huron.
So why did I decide to write a memoir? I decided to share the story of my life for a couple of reasons. With 85% of my autistic peers not meaningfully employed, my book covers many of the facilitators that occurred in my life to break from this dismal statistic, so I could find and keep a job and live independently. I would like to give autistic people and their families hope, to inspire people like me to do whatever they dream of, while at the same time giving parents a light at the end of a sometimes dark tunnel.
So what do we hope you get out of participating today? This slide highlights a favorable review by an educator in California who captures our 3 goals. Number 1, to inspire. Number 2, to increase your understanding and insight with possible application to your students, clients, child, or even yourself. And thirdly, and at the very least, to hear one autistic person's journey navigating life in a complex and not overly inclusive world. Now, Blake's memoir is upbeat, but it's not sugar-coated. What makes his memoir unique is that he interviewed and wove in 50 friends, family, classmates, teachers, and work colleagues' perspectives.
My book in a nutshell is broken into these 5 chapters. Chapter 1, it was the best of times and the hardest of times. Chapter 2, from finger paints to prom dates, my elementary school years. Chapter 3, my teen years, surviving and thriving in high school. Chapter 4, Adulthood 101. And lastly, Chapter 5, Define Normal and Other Thoughts. Here are 3 short audio clips that show how I went from not talking to echolalia as a preschooler to stuttering in grade 3 to today as a radio broadcaster.
Can you sing Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star?
Yeah!
Please?
Yeah!
Okay. Let's do your inside voice. Twinkle, twinkle, little star.
Yeah!
How I wonder
What you want.
I love you. Have a great day. Yeah.
Good afternoon with your 12 o'clock update from the Arctic Radio Newsroom. I'm Blake Priddle. The University College of the North announced that they will be delaying classes until January the 10th. The decision was made in an effort to reduce the spread of the Omicron variant of COVID-19, and they're also expected to switch to remote learning for some courses. More information is available on thepawnline.com. That's your news. Taking a look at sports. The Canadian Figure Skating Championship will be held next month in a spectator-free setting in Ottawa. Fans will no longer be allowed to attend due to rising COVID-19 numbers. The Skate Canada announcement came on the same day that the Ontario government reduced indoor venue capacity limits. Good afternoon.
Here is an excerpt from the foreword as told by my mom.
3 words changed my life. Good morning, Blake, I said as I entered my toddler's room one sunny fall morning. There he was, standing in his crib, beaming that most lovable grin and jumping up and down on his tippy toes, excited to see me, his mum. Good morning, Blake, he squealed back to me. I froze. Armed with a master's degree in child development and being an aunt and friend to many young kids, I knew this was not the right response for an 18-month-old. He should have said, "Up, Mummy. I want up. Hi, Mummy." But no, instead, he echoed back what he heard me say. I knew in that instant, as my heart pounded and my gut retched, that my world was now orbiting a completely different path than I had ever imagined.
Here is an excerpt from Chapter 1. People on the autism spectrum have different kinds of sensory issues. No two are alike. Having a difficult time with loud noises was one of the many sensory issues I had as a child, but that was just the tip of the iceberg. People who know me will tell you that I hate being hot in any season. Many contributors to this book wrote something about me wearing no layers in the winter or swimming in frigid water. My mom got a stern letter from the principal one time because I arrived at school with no winter clothes on. Mom told me that she used to drive around the schoolyard after lunch recess to find my hoodies peeled off and tossed. She told me that she regularly rummaged through the school office lost and found box. When I was really little, before I went to school, I showed 4 main early autistic signs: hyper and hyposensitivities, allergic to heat, love the cold, didn't freak out when I hurt myself, so I had a high pain threshold. Idiosyncratic language, delayed learning to speak, and when I did learn to speak, I learned with echolalia. Unexpected loud noises caused panic and meltdown, and difficulty with change in routine.
So this slide was taken from Blake's grade 2 teacher's daily communication book, and it shows him being a rules police. It reads, "It was quite a good day. He was a little upset when he came in at lunch because he told another student he was being rude because of the way he was speaking to another person. The boy then yelled or spoke loudly to Blake. He settled down after I spoke to the boys about it."
Here's an excerpt from Chapter 2. You literals kill me and black and white think it. A lot of people on the autism spectrum take things literally, and I was no different. When I say take things literally, I'm talking about popular idioms. My grade 1 teacher, Kathy Clackett, recalled that I didn't always understand teasing from my classmates either. She said, Blake would read and process comments by others in a different way. I tried to be cognizant and help him interpret these statements. On one occasion, Blake ran into the classroom after recess, upset and frantic because someone in the yard had told him that they were going to kill him. Blake totally believed this individual, and he feared for his life. It took a while to calm him down and convince him that the comment was just an expression. It was a funny incident for some, but not for Blake. As time went on, he learned the ropes and would laugh with us when he really understood. We love those times when he found humor in himself and his interpretations. I had 2 main challenges in elementary school. I struggled making friends, so the Peer Buddy program helped. I learned differently. All my teachers were great except one was a dud, and they made small accommodations to make me successful in class. For example, I had a safe place to go when overwhelmed. I had the super same caring special ed teacher from grade 5 until 8, and I had EA support from grade 5 until 8.
And Blake's individual education plans were jointly produced by his special ed resource teacher, Blake's dad, Ted, and myself. Blake attended these IEP and IPRC meetings, but he will tell you it sounded like Charlie Brown's teacher, right? So we pushed for concrete, actionable things like double time for tests, one question at a time. Please measure the reciprocal play with a peer, maybe 10 minutes once a day. So we have 3 tips for teachers who may have an autistic student. Number 1, if you don't know enough about ASD, learn. Number 2, become friends with the parents. At first, we may seem very annoying, but we can be your biggest allies. And thirdly, pay attention to kids who are alone all the time and make an effort to engage others with those kids. Now, we didn't care if Blake couldn't do trigonometry. The world is a social world, so we advocated for social skills development to be as important as the 3 R's. The school administration and the staff were 100% in favor of this. The resources and programming like Peer Buddies that we brought to Blake's school also benefited others. We also advocated for a more inclusive town. So here's a short excerpt from Blake's memoir highlighting this.
The beauty of a small town. There are a million things that we need to master as we grow towards independence. One of them is walking home from school. I needed to learn how to walk to my mom's office after school in grade 4. The route was straightforward: exit the side door, cross the yard, use the crossing guard, cross the highway, walk for 1.5 kilometers on the sidewalk, and cross 8 intersections. I did a few practice runs with my mom following in the car. My incentive was a frozen yogurt cone. My mom says that this was a big day for me. She waited and watched through the storefront window for me to come hopping in. Well, it didn't quite go as planned. I got picked up by a family friend who insisted I get in. After all, I was autistic and it was unsafe to walk alone alongside a busy highway. My mom said that she also got 2 phone calls from worried folks who saw me walking. Has he run away? Is he okay? Hey, I got my frozen yogurt cone faster than if I had walked. That's the beauty of a small town. Next time I was told I had to walk and say a polite no thank you to any pickup offers if I wanted my cone. My book has no shortage of stories about social exclusion and bullying that I endured in my school years. One episode that haunted my mom took place on the first day of grade 5. You'll have to read the book to find out what the teacher did. An excerpt from chapter 2. Anxiety, fear, OCD, and depression. How much can one person handle? Anxiety and depression. Where do I start with this one? The truth is, all human beings experience these mental states. It's part of being human. Some people can handle these emotions with no trouble, but others really struggle. The way anxiety feels can differ for each person. Sometimes it feels like butterflies in my tummy. Other times it feels like I can't calm down and can't breathe to the point where I hyperventilate. And sometimes I feel pain like someone has stabbed me all over my body with a knife. That's the worst kind. It can be unbearable. Panic attacks are also common. If you never had a panic attack, trust me, you never want to. It literally feels like you're dying. In grade 5, I was diagnosed with obsessive compulsive disorder. It is super common for folks on the spectrum to have what are called co-conditions, other mental health challenges. Here is an excerpt from chapter 3, My Teen Years, Surviving and Thriving in High School. High school is the best years of some kids' lives, while others just want to forget it. The Bare Naked Ladies song Grade 9 details those struggles, but nothing they sing about happened to me. No, high school for me was not about wet willies and swirlies. It was struggling with difficult subjects, relationships, and bullies. The first week at EHS, home of the Spartans, went pretty well. I met my teachers and gained an understanding of what to expect in the courses, and I spent an hour or so each day in the ASD resource room where I could do my work, take a sensory break, or talk about problems. Having the ASD classroom led by Mr. Diebel, also known as Mr. D, was so beneficial. I had people that knew me and understood that I learned differently. Unwritten social rules and what happens if not followed. So I've been taught social rules like don't invade people's space, don't stare at someone, no matter how good looking they are, and don't make comments about anyone's bodies, good or bad. Then I watch real life unfold and I'm confused. When I'm with my cousins and friends, we tell dirty jokes and make the occasional inappropriate comment. Teens and adults will often touch someone when they are not a family member. It seems like there are exceptions to these rules which are unwritten and not easy to decode. My memoir has a number of hard to write and read episodes of me learning how to navigate high school, relationships, peer pressure, and figuring out what I want to do with my life. I had two main challenges in high school: math, hence a math tutor, and two, thinking I needed to have a girlfriend, hence a life coach. Here's a few tips that I have for high school teachers if they have an autistic student. Number one, be patient. Every kid is different. Number two, build on the kid's strengths, interest, and passion. And number three, be there to listen. Another short excerpt from chapter 3, my first job. It's really important for people on the spectrum to be employed in one way or another. I have seen parents on social media say that their kids are unemployable. Temple Grandin, one of my heroes, used to clean horse stalls. Even if your kids can't work a minimum wage job, there are all kinds of things that autistic people can do. They can stuff envelopes or shovel snow. In grade 8, my mom got me involved in a program that helped teens on the autism spectrum prepare for the workforce. She had to take time off work to drive me 70 kilometers to Sudbury each week to the program. It covered all the basic aspects of the workplace, like what to do in a job interview, how to behave on the job, and how to deal with customers properly. My first job at Winkles as a front-end service clerk didn't just happen. My mom was instrumental in helping to create the supported employment program, and she fought for it to be offered in our community. She sat on the board of directors that offered the program and used that as leverage to bring the program to my town. Thankfully, there are many more job training programs becoming available, but we still have a long way to go until all of us have meaningful and inclusive work, especially in rural and northern communities. Chapter 4 involves becoming an adult. Here is a short excerpt from my Seneca College experience that illustrates how an autistic person can get stuck and not appear high functioning. One of my favorite parts of this course was simulating a live newscast in a television studio at the school. We took turns as anchor, weather reporter, control person, and sports reporter, and we would cover whatever news was making headlines that day. In general, my days in this course went well, but one day was terrible. I had locked myself out of my apartment, and I was really embarrassed. I was unable to concentrate most of the day because I was in the big city without anyone living close by. Because of the anxiety I was facing, I had to take time out from class. My classmates checked on me from time to time, and it felt good to have people look out for me. But I felt like a burden and an inconvenience. Fortunately, one of my professors assured me that I wasn't a burden and that I could stay at her place that night if I needed to. Talk about compassionate. As always, Mom was calm and suggested that I stay at a hotel for the night and she would reimburse me, which was a good idea. Being in distress is nothing to be ashamed of. I thought of what Teresa, my life coach, taught me about how to handle my emotions by practicing breathing techniques to reduce my stress. Eventually, my landlord unlocked my door, and my cousin Nick and I got some spare keys cut that night. I also put a sign on the back of my door that said, "Don't forget the keys." College years. Number one, I thought I didn't need accommodations. Boy, was I wrong. Number two, I didn't disclose my ASD until third semester at Loyalist College. Number 3, I was 9 years younger and 9 years dumber. LOL. Number 4, with increased workload, I needed to learn how to de-stress and manage better. For example, I needed some quiet time and I needed to sometimes punch something to get my anger out. One of my professors offered to let me punch some styrofoam that he had in his office. Here are some tips for college professors if they have an ASD student. Figure out what accommodations they need and provide them. Number 2, if there is a social group for autistics, consider including non-autistics as well if the group agrees. Number 3, asking for help is a sign of strength, not weakness. What my present work life is like at Arctic Radio in the PA. Number 1, it's a family-run station. Number 2, accommodations are in place. I have a quiet office and I used to use a checklist. Number 3, I get positive, constructive feedback to continually get better. Here are some tips for other employers that have or are thinking of hiring autistics. Give us a chance. If we have the job skills, we will do great when you put in basic accommodations to make us successful. Number 2, consider a job coach or mentor, especially at the beginning of being hired. Chapter 5 covers topics like what is normal, ableism, and the social model of disability. I also discuss loaded terms such as high functioning and neurodiversity. My takeaway message is simply ask the person how they would like to be referred. I will now share a few of my closing thoughts from Chapter 5 on how it feels to have autism. I was diagnosed with autism in kindergarten, but before that, my parents, family, and friends knew that I was different, as did I. I wasn't told that I had autism until I was about 9 years old. But once it was revealed, things in my life that I had questions about started to make sense. I did certain things that no one else did. I knew some of these things weren't normal, but I did them anyway. Apparently, I marched to the beat of my own drum. One of my media mentors, Roz, said, I remember Blake doing some Zumba at the recreation complex. He was right up there, front and center, encouraging others, especially kids, to come forward. It made people laugh, but in a good way. He was so obviously enjoying himself. If I was diagnosed with autism as a child today, my parents probably would not have prevented me from stimming or forced me to make eye contact because more people have a better understanding of autism than they did in the 90s. They understand that hand flapping is how some people on the spectrum cope. My guess is there are still lots of autistics that don't get past the job interview stage because their lack of eye contact is misinterpreted. This is one reason that it's a good idea to disclose your autism and then emphasize your skills. My life with autism has been mostly wonderful, and I would never trade it for anything. Although I would gladly trade my OCD and anxiety for a cold beer any day, but I don't have that option. In closing, Martin Luther King once said he had a dream that one day his children would live in a nation where they are not judged by the color of their skin. I have a dream that one day we will live in a nation, no, a world, where everyone with autism is accepted for who they are and not judged. I dream of a world where money and greed doesn't get in the way of providing services for autistic people to help them live their dreams. Society has made mistakes in the way that it treats those that are different, but we have the power to change the future and embrace new inclusive schools, workplaces, and communities. So thank you all so very much for taking the time to listen to our presentation today, and please buy a book as soon as you can. You're going to enjoy it.
So if you haven't already, as Blake noted, there's a few different ways that you can access his book. It's available paperback, hardcover, and ebook. And later in 2022, it'll also be available by audiobook. So that's look forward to that as well. And should you have any questions, or if you'd like to reach out, by all means do so. Blake is happy to take questions, and he can answer them either by texting or by email as well on his website. So thank you very much and have a great day.
Happy reading.